taking Anavar to raise my baseline collagen synthesis and neuromuscular connection and drive force, but that wasn't good enough. DECA was cool, but too anabolic. So what's next? Is growth hormone the best compound for driving collagen synthesis? Can it raise fibroblasts and tendons better than nandrolone or Anavar without compromising tendon architecture? Are the side effects manageable enough to where we could potentially leverage growth hormone while still being able to climb on the wall for both men and women? Could we even manage the side effects like the edema, the water retention in our fingers, and potential insulin resistance? Well, today we're going over all of that and more on the first growth hormone deep dive for rock climbers. I'm Adam with Anabolic Climbing. Don't forget to like and subscribe. These deep dives take a bunch of time. But now the wait's over. Let's jump into it. Unlike anabolics like nandrolone or Anavar, growth hormone is endogenous to both men and women, expressed largely through puberty and during the evening. Its secretion is highest before sleep, during sleep rather. And growth hormone does heavily drive collagen synthesis, and it repairs on its own. Well, yeah, it does actually drive some repair, but the real mechanism that's giving us the better collagen synthesis is through IGF-1, which is what's doing most of the heavy lifting. So when we're getting into the mechanisms of growth hormone and the increase in collagen synthesis, how much are we looking at? Well, the answer seems to be about 3.9-fold in tendon collagen mRNA expression. So in longer term studies, I've been able to map out that you could potentially get 3x or between 22 to 33% more collagen expression in our fingers as we continue to train them, which is BANANAS. By the way, as we take a look through the study, basically what happened is we gave some young healthy males between 3 to 6 IUs of growth hormone over 2 weeks, and they wanted to see the potential on repair to, I want to say it was the patellar tendon. And what we saw was growth hormone levels going up between 3 to 10x, serum IGF-1 tripled, and the growth hormone study, or the growth hormone group rather, showed a 17% larger stimulus versus the placebo, and most importantly, and I cannot stress this enough, no deleterious morphology happened to the tendon fibrils. So the architecture to the tendon continued to look awesome despite getting increased collagen deposition and thickness to the tendons. Damn. By the way, the growth hormone exerts a matrix stabilizing effect, so it preserves tendon stiffness, which is a byproduct of strength, during inactivity. So if you guys remember that testosterone study that natties cope and seethe about, where, they just gave a bunch of dudes like half a gram of testosterone and they grew like weeds. That doesn't happen with growth hormone. I can't just pin like 16 IUs a night of growth hormone and expect my tendons to get stronger and to drive better force production. But what will happen is if I'm immobilized or if I'm injured, my tendons won't get weaker. So it can keep you at your baseline in helping recovery from injury, but it's not going to drive force production or hypertrophy like you'd expect with testosterone for muscles. So definitely helpful during an injury. Tendon architecture looks good, checking a bunch of the boxes. And wait a minute, if I'm getting injured and I need to be immobilized, and growth hormone could ultimately help me in terms of preserving that strength, does it help the healing? Well, the answer seems to be yes. While it doesn't help at all during week 1 in terms of what's happening with the baseline with the tendon stiffness towards recovery, we can see it beginning to outperform the placebo group, we can see it outperforming the placebo group when taking, again, 3 to 4 IUs of exogenous growth hormone per night, which is amazing. During the first week, probably leveraging something like BPC 157 or TB 500 potentially together could catalyze the healing, as both of those have anti-inflammatory properties that growth hormone just doesn't have. So those are probably your better healing compounds, but stacked together, all 3 of them drive angiogenesis or the promotion of new veins, and it would help nutrient delivery for all 3. That plus leveraging the IGF-1 and getting more nutrient absorption through that mechanism as well You'd heal super fast if you ran all three in conjunction. Anyways, shifting back. After ACL surgeries, essentially folks were comparing the tendon stiffness from the placebo to HGH, and placebo lost about 20% of their quadricep volume, only 8% by the HGH group, and after, I want to say, the 26th week mark, the quad and hamstrings had gained 29 to 39% more torque compared to the placebo. So you will, on growth hormone, as it relates to an injury recovery, be able to generate or get back to play in a healthier manner way faster, which is awesome. And the fact that HGH led to a meaningful improvement in the quadricep strength after 6 months with no increase in muscle volume suggests that you're enhancing muscle quality and recovery function. And okay, I'm going to get into this in a little bit. Also drives some cartilage protection, which is great. HGH operates through IGF-1 mediated pathways to enhance muscle function, so that helps with the satellite cell activation and protein synthesis. When it comes to cuts, burns, and gashes, looking at you there, buddy. Growth hormone also it helps with collagen turnover in skin as well. So for children that were dealing with burns, their burns closed at the 1.5 days on growth hormone versus 2.3 with placebo. So again, if you guys have flappers, cuts, scrapes, GH is a viable option for helping with improving skin as well, or at least on paper. So far, I have a volume day on Thursday, so I'll check back in to see how my skin's feeling after a whole bunch of boulders. But so far, skin's felt really good on the GH over the last couple of weeks. That said, growth hormone is not a substitute for exercise. But this is sort of where I can go into one of my theories that I would rather have stimulus over synthesis. So because we know that growth hormone isn't a substitute for exercise, we need to be able to take as much growth hormone as we could tolerate, but still climb or do block pulls. We can't just blast growth hormone and expect to climb V20. If you're taking so much growth hormone that the stiffness in your fingers is too much or you're unable to hang on the wall, you're better off lowering your dose and just taking as much as you can tolerate versus blasting it and hoping that it'll do the work for you. It won't. You're better off getting the stimulus from crimping hard, pinching hard, doing hard block pulls, pulling really hard, not just taking the drug for the sake of hoping that it'll do the work for you. So the side effects are going to include water retention and edema. You're going to notice that in your fingers and potentially in your ankles as well. And by the way, you're going to start noticing the edema at around the 3 IU mark and as you go higher. I noticed it a bit on 2 IUs, but it wasn't that big of a deal. It was worse when I got up to 3 or 3.5. And part of the reason for that is it's going to disrupt your electrolyte balance. It's going to weigh more heavier on the potassium versus the sodium. So some of the ways that you can combat this edema or stiffness in the fingers is up your potassium, up your taurine, hydrate as much as you can, and keep your sodium lower than you normally would. As a guy that loves Chick-fil-A nuggets and In-N-Out as well, lowering your sodium is going to be more beneficial to just water retention in general. And you're going to notice it as it can potentially drive short-term carpal tunnel. Doesn't really matter for me as this is kind of all I could do now. But as soon as you come off the GH, you can largely undo it. And the same thing with the stiffness in the fingers. One of the other things that you're going to notice is you're probably going to sleep better, but you might be more tired. Growth hormone does drive some lethargy and fatigue. It can potentially give you some gastric distress or bloating. I haven't really noticed it too much. But yeah, I definitely wake up a little bit more tired on GH. So the taurine for me is a benefit. But yeah, I sleep better, but I also am just a little more tired initially. There are some metabolic effects worth taking into consideration too. So one of the impacts of GH is it will assist with lipolysis, so it will help you get leaner, not just get bigger. But also part of that is you're more likely to build up insulin resistance and changes to your fasting blood glucose levels. And your fast-acting insulin might rise. You're probably going to need to lower your carbohydrate intake to counteract some of these effects. By all means, throw in some retatrutide if that's a thing that can help you with it. That's certainly what I've been using. And I wouldn't worry as much about the blood glucose or the insulin resistance below 3 IUs, but it's worth watching. If you drive up to 4, 5, or 6, you will definitely need to be mindful of this and watch it in your blood work and potentially get yourself a glucose monitor. Also, I wouldn't expect any acromegaly or growth in fingers outside of like increased tendon stiffness at the 3 IU mark. But if you start bumping above 4, settle in for that. And the same thing can go for growths in feet, potentially enlarging of the brow, the nose. That's definitely an impact of high-dose growth hormone, especially over extended periods of time. If you see bodybuilders, their noses will potentially get a little bit more pointed, or you'll see them like developing that little like crow's nest, or I don't know if it's a crow's nest or what it's called, but when they start like developing like a beak on their forehead, Ian Valliere had it for a little bit when he was like really pushing the growth hormone. It looks pretty wild. And while that is not helpful for boulders or sport climbers, scorching hot take. But if you are a crack climber and you need a little bit bigger hands or feet, you could absolutely go with super physiological levels of growth hormone if you can afford it to grow your hands and feet to make jamming that much more or that much simpler. It's definitely an option that you have. What else? Also, keep in mind that in addition to IGF-1 being one of the drivers of protein absorption, growth hormone does increase angiogenesis, or the growth of new veins. I mentioned this earlier, but that is going to help with nutrient delivery to the fingers as time goes on. The other issue, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is that while angiogenesis is dope for the purposes of hypertrophy or injury recovery, it also increases nutrient delivery for cancers as well. So if you're going to leverage growth hormone, for the love of God, please do cancer screenings yearly or every couple months. Personally, I have had a few of these side effects. My blood sugar has been fine since I've been using Retta, but I watch it. Prior to getting on Retta, I was always hovering around the pre-diabetic range. So it's definitely something that I'm really mindful of when I'm taking exogenous growth hormone. I actually just started taking a potassium supplement, and my fingers are fine for the most part, but on heavy block pull days or after hard board sessions, it is really hard to close my fingers. And sometimes, and I've mentioned this in other videos, but if you haven't watched it, the reason it took me like over half a dozen times to stick on growth hormone for extended periods of time is when you're getting, or at least when I'm getting used to the edema in my fingers, I will be like pulling on stuff on the wall and my fingers feel tender and they feel sore. And I know they're not injured. Like everything works. It just hurts. And at a certain point, I just adjust to it, push through, and it's no big deal. But it's definitely something that you should probably expect. And also, I noticed it every time I increase my dose. So when I was using 2 IUs, I would tolerate it. 3 IUs, I would deal with the edema, but then I would come back and tolerate it. Bumped up to 3.5 IUs just so that I could kill a vial in 3 pins as opposed to having a remainder. And yeah, came back again. And that's kind of my current dose. Although I could potentially bump higher, I don't want to go above 3 1/3 IUs. I think 4 is about as high as you should run it. There is weight gain associated with growth hormone, and even though you're driving collagen synthesis, and even though you're driving tendon integrity, it doesn't yield force production on its own. So one of the things that I love about growth hormone is it's not going to drive force production on its own, And even though it will increase lean body mass and it will help with fat loss, I like running it with Anavar or with another anabolic, in my case, Masteron as well, to have something to drive additional force production so that this way I can get all the stimulus I can into my fingers and then let the growth hormone do everything it can for the tendon remodeling and the tendon growth. I think, or at least my hypothesis, is that's the best way to drive tendon strength through growth hormone. And, we're going to find out at the end of this experiment how much my block pulls are able to increase. So far, I've put my working weight up to, I want to say at peak, around 140. So if I'm able to get up to 150 over the next couple of weeks, I think there's something to this. I have noticed I've been able to generate more strength through my fingers since going on the growth hormone after hitting a plateau for a while. So far, that seems pretty encouraging. But also that could just be part of running the Masteron, and maybe that helped me pull through. And since we've talked about max dosing, for the most part, I do not like growth hormone secretagogues. I think MK677 is trash, not just for climbers, but in general. But one of the peptides, CJC1295, might actually be decent for climbers. Basically, it'll upregulate your growth hormone production and has similar signaling to IGF-1, and the impact seems to kind of cap at around 2 IUs, but it's only 1 pin a week. So if you guys know my feelings on injections. If you're not injecting daily, you're kind of dropping the ball, and you shouldn't be doing this. But growth hormone suppression and shutdown isn't like testosterone. You recover and bounce back pretty quick. So there might be merit to folks hopping on the CJC1295 to test, because that'll get you up to 2 IUs worth of growth hormone a night. It's not going to be as steady as running straight GH, but at least on paper, it seems like it could potentially be beneficial. I want to do a full study into CJC1295. These are just thoughts. I'm not super confident about it, but in the modeling that I've plotted out, it does look super interesting. So last, I kind of want to talk about weight gain and the synergies with GH and other compounds. So they've done studies where they'll give someone 150 to 200 milligrams of testosterone, and they'll gain between 6 to 10 pounds of lean body mass, and they'll give someone 3 IUs worth of growth hormone, and over 12 weeks they'll gain about 3 to 6 pounds. But if you put them together, it stacks. So if you're taking tests plus GH, maybe you're going to gain between 12 to 18 pounds. And, it's definitely a synergistic compound. So if you're going with the polypharmacy route, be mindful that you are going to gain some more weight with the growth hormone, but hopefully the tendon integrity and the strength that you gain from your other anabolics justify its use. Also, women can't take anabolics, they can take growth hormone. If you're keeping it to under 3.5 IUs, you could I wouldn't recommend this for longevity, but if you're sort of pushing grades as hard as you can, you could run this for years, and growth hormone, unlike testosterone, will not virilize or transition women. So you could really run growth hormone for a while as a woman, and it's perfectly safe. One of my climbing partners has been running growth hormone for over a decade, and she definitely looks jacked, but has still retains all of the femininity that you would expect from being female. So there are women that run it for anti-aging purposes. It will certainly help you carry more muscle, and if you're a gal that's trying to hold on to all the muscle that you can for aging, I kind of support it. I definitely think that it has its place in a female climber's regimen if that's a direction that she wants to go, assuming that you're comfortable with the cancer risks and you're monitoring your blood glucose and all of that as well. But, if you guys have stuck around this long, please do not forget to like and subscribe. I'm planning to do some more content on the healing peptides, as there's been a lot of interest on this within the community. I want to go over, even though I touched on the synergy between BPC 157, TB 500, and growth hormone, I want to go into more detail as to the mechanisms of action and go through some case studies of some folks that have been able to cut their healing time super, super short. As always, I appreciate you guys so much for the effort and for so much for the support. I have some upcoming collaborations with a few creators that I'm super over the moon about, so please stick around for those as time goes on. There's been more and more growth to this channel this week, which again means the world to me. And yeah, thank you guys for all the support. Thank you for all the interest in PEDs and rock climbing. It genuinely means the world to me. So, as always, I'm Adam with Anabolic Climbing. The camera's a little too short for a front double bicep. I'll try to go out there a little bit, but I want to wish you guys happy sending. Be safe. As always, if you want to support the channel, please hit up Anabolic Insights. You can get lab work for 70% less than what your doctor is offering. They do custom labs for folks that are natural or some enhanced checklists. They're amazing. Please check them out. I'm getting lab work done tomorrow, so I will be showing you guys how Anabolic Insights works on that. But appreciate you guys as always. You're the best. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.